For over 100 years, one name has captured our imagination like few others: Titanic. It was a symbol of incredible luxury and, at the same time, a story of unbelievable disaster. They called it the unsinkable ship. So how did it end up at the bottom of the ocean on its very first trip? Let's get into it.
Okay, so this right here is the whole story in a nutshell. It's built on this giant contradiction. On one side, you've got the promise, a ship so advanced, so well built, that people genuinely believed it was practically unsinkable. And on the other side, the cold, hard reality. It sank on its maiden voyage. It just begs the question, how on earth did that happen?
Well, to really get the tragedy, you have to understand the sheer scale of the dream. The Titanic wasn't just another ship. It was designed from the ground up to be a floating palace.
And when we say big, we mean big. The Titanic was 882 feet long. I mean, picture 3 football fields laid end to end. That's how long this thing was. For its time, it was an absolute giant, a true marvel of engineering.
And for the richest passengers, the luxury was just on another level. We're talking about the first ever heated swimming pool on a ship, a full-size gym, a squash court, and even these incredible Turkish baths. It was basically a 5-star hotel that happened to be crossing the Atlantic. Now, this is the key piece of tech that gave everyone that unsinkable feeling. The ship's hull, you see, was divided into 16 separate watertight compartments. The idea was brilliant. If the ship got damaged and a few of them flooded, you could seal them off and the ship would stay afloat. It was seen as the ultimate safety feature.
For the first few days, everything was perfect. But as this floating palace sailed deeper into the freezing waters of the North Atlantic, things were about to take a very dangerous turn.
Okay, so everything went wrong on April 14th. All day long, other ships were radioing in warnings about icebergs up ahead. But for some reason, the Titanic just kept plowing forward at nearly top speed. And then at 11:40 at night, the lookout saw it, a huge iceberg dead ahead.
And here's a really cruel twist. A calm sea sounds like a good thing, right? Well, on this night, it was a disaster. Because the water was so still, there were no waves breaking against the base of the iceberg, which would have created a line of white foam. So it was practically invisible in the pitch-black night until it was way, way too late.
In less than 10 seconds, the fate of more than 2,000 people was sealed. The actual collision was shockingly fast, but the damage was absolutely catastrophic.
So let's walk through it. The lookout spots the ice, sounds the alarm. On the bridge, they immediately order the engines reversed and the ship to be turned hard. But the Titanic was a monster. It was simply too big and moving too fast to dodge in time. Instead of hitting the iceberg head-on, it scraped along the side and the ice sliced open 5 of those watertight compartments. Now remember, it was designed to survive 4 flooding, but 5? That was a death sentence.
Once they realized the ship was actually going down, the radio operators were ordered to send out a distress call. They used the older signal, which was CQD, but they also used the brand new one that we all recognize today, SOS. It was one of the very first times it was ever famously used.
And we have to remember who was on the ship. It was a floating city. There were over 2,200 people on board, a mix of some of the wealthiest people in the world and poor immigrants just hoping for a shot at a new life in America.
Now, get ready for maybe the most shocking fact of this whole story. Even if every single lifeboat was filled perfectly, there was only room for 1,178 people. That's just over half of everyone on board. The safety rules back then were tragically out of date. They were based on a ship's weight, not how many people it was carrying. For a ship the size of the Titanic, this was a fatal flaw.
The evacuation itself was complete chaos. Of course, the crew tried to follow the women and children first rule. But you know, in the beginning, a lot of people just couldn't believe this magnificent ship was actually sinking. So unbelievably, many of the first lifeboats were launched with dozens of empty seats. As the front of the ship filled with water, the back, or the stern, rose higher and higher out of the ocean. The stress on the ship's metal frame was just too much, and it literally ripped itself in half. By 2:20 in the morning, the Titanic was gone. And for anyone left in the water, survival was almost impossible. The water temperature was below freezing.
But the story doesn't end when the ship goes down. The sinking of the Titanic was such a shock to the world that it forced a complete revolution in maritime safety. This single event would lead to changes that are still saving lives today.
The final numbers are just heartbreaking. Of the more than 2,200 people on the ship, over 1,500 lost their lives that night. Only about 705 people survived, rescued from the lifeboats by the liner Carpathia, which arrived hours later.
So what changed? Well, a lot. New international laws were passed almost immediately. First, and most importantly, every ship was now required to have enough lifeboats for every single person on board. No more excuses. Second, ships had to keep their radios on 24/7, so a distress call would never go unheard again. And finally, the International Ice Patrol was created to specifically track icebergs and warn ships.
For over 70 years, the Titanic was lost to the world, resting in total darkness. Its location was a mystery. Then, finally, in 1985, an exploration team found the wreck, almost 2.5 miles down on the ocean floor.
You know, the Titanic really represented the height of technology and confidence for its time. People thought it was foolproof. And that leaves us with a pretty important question to think about today. What are the unsinkable technologies that we put all our trust in now? And what lessons from that freezing night in 1912 should we make sure we never ever forget?